All alone, I doubt it. She red bone, or no brown skin. Them jeans, she can fit a few pounds, and everybody wanna know where I found her. I'm like, don't worry.
Hey everybody, I'm so excited to finally be launching Perspectives on Wife. Thank you so much for watching and thanks for all the support. My first ever guest on the show is Miss Brittney Holmes Jackson. I am so excited to have her here. She is a wife, a teacher, a national best-selling author. She is founder of nonprofit organization R.A.D.I.N.C.E, which is also the name of her blog. She is wife to Mr. Chris Jackson, who is a student at the Morehouse School of Medicine. And honestly, I met her about almost a year ago now, and she's probably the most go-getting, most ambitious, most amazing wife that I've ever met. And so I was like, I have to interview this girl, and she has a lot to say. And I'm just gonna jump right into it because I'm really excited. So Brittney, welcome.
Thank you for having me, Vernique. I'm really excited about being here, excited about this new venture you're embarking on. It sounds amazing. And also just happy to be here to offer my perspective on life as a wife, entrepreneur, and a working woman, because weirdly I'm all three.
Yeah.
So
yeah, you are, girl. Well, thanks for agreeing to come. First of all, I want to know, if you had to pick a soundtrack to your marriage, what would it be?
It's probably not really a soundtrack to our marriage per se, but more so a soundtrack for how I feel about my husband. Let's Hear It for the Boy, Denise Williams. Love that song.
Okay.
It's real old school throwback, but it's a song about, you know, kind of the boy that you really wouldn't see yourself with. And my husband is very much so kind of like an old school chivalrous type guy, and might get into this later, but that's just not the type of guy that I was initially drawn towards.
So you like you a bad boy.
Yeah, you know. So unfortunately, that was my path at one point in time, and then I was more drawn to him as I matured and got older. And that song just kind of really resonates with me because it talks about a boy who can't sing. He doesn't always dress a certain way and all this kind of stuff, but like, he's my boy. That's my man. So I would pick that one.
I love that. That's cute. So if you had to define the word wife, how would you define it?
Sacrificial would probably be the best word I could think of, simply because there are a lot of people kind of don't like when wives or women talk about how much they sacrifice, but there is a lot of sacrifice that goes into being a wife. You do kind of put everyone else in the household before yourself, and that's kind of our current situation without having kids right now, is that there's a lot of sacrifice going on both ends, but a lot more on mine because my husband is in med school right now. So I would definitely say there's a lot of sacrificial action happening where being a wife is concerned, and I think that's across the board for most wives because they want the best out of their husbands and out of their marriage, especially at our age when we marry young and our husbands may not be where they want to be yet, so we kind of support them and sacrifice some of the things that we desire to get them to where they want to be, and then, you know, everything else kind of follows suit.
Yeah. And I like the part that you said about, especially without having kids, because I think that the misconception is that, oh, it's just you and your husband, like, life must be super breezy,
hard.
right? And you're like, no, that's not the way it works. We're super busy. It's because we don't have kids that people actually, there are more expectations of us, and there are more things that we're trying to go after, because, you know, this is the time is now for us.
Yeah, definitely.
So,
definitely.
I definitely hear that. Okay, so since we were on the topic, can you tell us a little bit about you and Chris's love story and, you know, where you are now?
Okay. So, as I mentioned before, he was not always my type. And, you know, I think one of the biggest lessons that I learned in our courtship is that what we desire for ourselves as women or as men is not always what God has planned for us. So 2011, I was a senior in college. He was just coming in for a post-bac program. He was coming from Georgia Southern. He came to UGA, and I was already there on campus. My senior year, we met. I think there was an immediate attraction. There was a lot of smiling, giggling going on. Both of us were single at the time, but not too long after I started to date another guy. But we remained friends. I graduated. I moved to Jacksonville to do Teach for America. We kind of kept in touch a little bit, just as friends, checking in with one another to see how life was just going. 2013, we got together for Valentine's Day, and everything went off without a hitch. We were just kind of like drawn into this whirlwind romance, so to speak. Everything was moving so fast, and I think it was a bit much for me, because mentally, emotionally, spiritually, I was just not ready. So I ended it at that time because I was afraid that if I continued, it would just be hurtful for both of us, but more so for him. So we went about a year without speaking. I would kind of try to check in with him, and about 2014 of December 2013, so the end of that year going into 2014, I just fasted from dating, from social lives, from doing anything that was not producing a better spiritual life for me. And 21 days later, after that fast, I contacted him and just said, hey, look, I apologize for what went down in the past. But if you would have me, like, or at the very least forgive me, I would like to be friends again, maybe start over. And he took his time with it because I think, he had his reservations, of course. But after that, we got back together March 2014. By February 2015, we were engaged. September 2015, married. We've been married for 2 years, and everything has been, substantially great. Nothing out of the ordinary, of course, but that's our story from meeting until marriage, and it's continuing to be written now, with its ups and downs, plot twists, and all that kind of stuff. So
yeah. And so the biggest plot twist is that, which was anticipated, was that Chris is now in med school.
Yes.
Let's talk about that. What has that been like for you? So you got married in September of 2015, and both of you were just kind of working, and then all of a sudden this year we get the call that, hey, you got accepted into med school, and then things just go from there.
Yeah.
So what has it been like?
It was an immediate switch. He's been, med school has been something on his radar for years prior to us even dating. So we knew it was coming. We were praying for it to come. Like, it was like, come on, because this is getting difficult. Like, he was not pleased with the 9-to-5 that he was working. It wasn't his calling. So we, of course, knew med school was coming. He had been applying, taking the MCAT. And, of course, the devil throws little, roadblocks in the way. Along the way, but he finally did. He got a call from Morehouse. He was initially waitlisted, and so that became our prayer. Okay, Lord, no, playing games. Let's go.
Yeah.
Like, can we go ahead and get into
Come
this
on,
school?
let's get this going.
Yeah. So he got in April or May of this year, and then classes started in June. So it was get into Morehouse, 2-week notice on the job, figuring out what finances were going to look like, going to school, doing, your FAFSA so we can get the financial aid and everything taken care of. And it was just really, really quick. And I think through the excitement of things finally happening for him, we didn't really realize what impact that would have on our marriage. So, of course, it caused, less time to be able to spend together. Our finances shifted drastically. I'm an educator by trade, so my other entrepreneurial activities don't really pay right now. So we're living, the two of us living off of a teacher salary, which is unheard of. But God has been really making it work, and that is just the premise of what he's been doing for us. We recently have kind of had to take a step back and acknowledge the fact that this has impacted our marriage more than just finances, more than just, not having time for each other. Like, I had to step back and say, am I really supporting my husband? Because my needs, I felt like at one point my needs weren't being met. So I would take that out, by withdrawing emotionally, physically, things like that. And I had to really say, am I supporting him in the way that he needs me to support him? And if I'm not, how can we go about changing that? And he also had to ask himself some really tough questions about the amount of time that he was spending on school versus what he could be spending with me at home and things like that. So we're recently engaged in a 21-day fast. Like, we're in the middle of it right now. We're on day 12. So that has really kind of brought us back to where we really want to be, as far as being intentional about spending time together and about spending time with God. Because again, our relationship wasn't just suffering, it was more so, it was also our relationship with God. We weren't spending time with him in the mornings, getting up, going to school, coming home, staying up until whatever time o'clock, doing schoolwork, and then going to sleep and doing it all over again in the morning. Because I didn't mention, but I'm also in graduate school. And so when I get off work and I come home, I'm now doing schoolwork as well. So it was just a lot of shifting that needed to occur, and it started with us getting back to our relationship with God. And with that came the, okay, let's be intentional about spending, even if it's just an hour after we get off work, turn off the phones, shut down the computers, and let's just sit here, talk about our day, eat together, watch television, whatever, and then we can get into the nitty-gritty of our studies. So it's been very difficult, not gonna lie at all. So, you know, lately people have asked me, how's married life? And the first thing that unfortunately comes out of my mouth is, it's all right. Yeah, 'cause, I mean, it's tough. It is super tough. And you don't want everybody to be all in your business, you know. Everything on social media is not always what it seems. But of course, I don't want to put everything out there, but at the same time, I'm not going to hide the realities of it. Because if a young woman, you know, as a wife, if young woman were to come up to us and ask us, what is wifehood like? What is marriage like? You want to be honest. You don't want to lead someone blindly into what this is, because it's not just rainbows and ice cream and all this sugary coated stuff. I mean, especially at our age when we're still kind of selfish. Like, I have ambitions, I have goals, but maybe that shifts because of what my husband has going on. Or maybe, you know, we both have to figure out, how do we get to where we want to be without overriding each other's dreams, and really working collaboratively when our dreams don't seem to actually align with one another. Then you kind of have to say, okay, Lord, like, what is it that you have for us? What is it that you want from our relationship? Because at the end of the day, the goal is for marriage to glorify him and his kingdom. So if everything that we're doing is about what we want as opposed to what is best for God's kingdom, then, you know, you got to really ask yourself some tough questions. And that's kind of what we're doing right now. And I mean, it's gotten better. Definitely has gotten better. I think we're in a place now where we understand what lies ahead. He's only finished his first semester of med school, so we still have 3.5 years left.
Yeah, but come on to that one semester now.
That one semester.
That one semester, you made it through one, okay?
Yeah.
That is enough to be celebrated.
It is for definitely. Sure. So the countdown is on, but more so just understanding while we're in this down season in the wilderness is what we're calling it. While we're here, what do we do here? What's our purpose here? So that's kind of where we are.
So you talked about you came to a point where you realized you guys needed to make a change, and you started asking yourself the question, am I really supporting my husband? So what was the catalyst for that? How did you know? What were the signs that you needed to make a change?
So I'm a really emotionally invested person. And my love language between my husband and I would be quality time. Okay. With everyone else, it's more other things, words of affirmations, things like that. But with him, it's quality time. Very emotionally invested. So I got to a point where I didn't care that we weren't spending time together. Okay. My emotions were bottled up, like, because I started out explaining to him, like, okay, I feel like we're not spending enough time together. I feel like, you know, you're focused a lot on your work, and I understand it's really hectic, crazy. You know, people told me the first couple of years of med school, he's going to be trying to figure out what is his best way to study. So I understood that, but I just felt like I wasn't getting what I needed as far as emotional support, quality time. So once I started withdrawing, it was just like, okay, I'm in an emotional, like, casket. Everything is inside of me, and I would come home when he was taking breaks from his work. I was like, okay, whatever, you know, you're taking a break right now, but I don't even care anymore. Like, I don't I don't want to spend time with you right now. Go ahead, just might as well just keep doing your work.
So just starting to shut off, basically.
Basically.
Wow. I've never heard that before. Emotional casket.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of people can relate to that sometimes. Realizing that, you know, I'm getting to a point where I'm totally shutting off.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's where I was, and that never happens because, I mean, anyone who knows me knows that I can be a very emotionally invested person, especially in an intimate relationship. Yeah. So, we got to that point, and there was like one huge blow up that was probably the biggest we've ever had before. And prior to getting married, Chris and I never argued like we have argued in our marriage. We used to have what I call discussions. We, you know, just talked it out. But this was just, it was out of whatever stratosphere we like. It was too much for both of us. And that was the turning point. It was like, okay, we need a plan of action because at this point we try our darnest like not to say divorce, but at that point it was like, look, well, if we're not saying divorce, we're gonna say separate bedrooms or separate something. We gotta go because this isn't working. So
I really want to just take that moment for a second because on AuthenticallyWed.com I have a blog post talking about you know, the 5 things that most people didn't tell you about marriage. And one of those things is that you think that you're never going to say the word divorce. Yeah. You think that you're never going to think about it. Like, people who divorce are quitters. And, like, we're not quitters. We're going to make it to the end. And though that should be your slogan, you know, though that should be the thing that you chase after, the reality is there are some things that get you to that point where you're like,
I can't do it anymore.
If this man don't get out my face, like, you know what I mean? And it's even sometimes even more than that. Like, how did we get here? What? Like, I never thought I would think about it, but this. And so I want to kind of validate you in that, that it does happen. But what is the difference is that you said, hey, this is a warning sign, and we need to take action.
Yeah, and we were both in on that. Like, we try not to let too many people in on what's going on, but he was able to talk to his parents, and I had, you know, someone to talk to at the time, and they were just like, okay, have y'all prayed? You know, are you praying? And we weren't praying for this situation. For me, it was just, I just wanted to go away. So I'm just going to wait out these 4 years when he gets his doctorate, and we're going to be good. We'll be good after that. That was my thought process. I'm just going to exist for the next few years. And like, that's something I actually always said I did not want to do because my mother and her second husband, she's on her 3rd marriage. My first father passed away, and she divorced my first stepfather. Now I have a second stepfather, and their marriage is phenomenally great. But that second marriage was 15 years of just mess, and she just existed for 15 years. So I said I never wanted to do that, but I was settling for that at this time. Like, not even only just a few months ago, not even, maybe a few weeks, that this was going on with us. So definitely had to take action from there, and that's where the whole 21-day fast came from. And moving forward, we're just like, okay, that can't happen again. Whatever's going on, we need to talk about it, and then develop some sort of resolution at that moment, and not just kind of let it linger. So,
and that's key to not, you know. It's one thing to have the argument or to have the blow up, but then when you're just like, that's it, you know, we're just gonna go to different, our separate corners. But to push yourself to work together for the sake of your marriage and for the sake of that other person is awesome. So how did you guys come up with this 21-day fast, or what is it rather? What is your 21-day fast?
So it kind of relates back to the 21 days where I fasted and prayed before going back to Chris and asking for, you know, him to have me back in his life. And I think it's Daniel in the Bible who has the 21-day fast and prayer and consecration. Churches do it all the time. So you kind of pick 1 or 2 things that you're either praying for or fasting from, and you just use that time every day to spend time with God, focus on a scripture that deals with whatever it is you're focused on, and just kind of go from there and let God lead you. So we've been doing it as a couple, but not necessarily together, if that makes sense. So he does his devotion whenever he feels like doing it throughout the day. I do mine. Okay. We write it down. We're journaling about it. People have kind of put bugs in our ear about turning it into an actual couple's devotion. So that's something we'll pray about and, you know, see if it gets to that point. I think it's a great idea, but a lot of the stuff that we're documenting is extremely personal. Yeah. So there may be some leeway to make it a little bit more general for whoever is reading it. But that's how it pretty much came about. Just taking time to focus on making God number one, again, in our marriage, and then also being intentional about spending time together, but also understanding where we are is there's a purpose behind it. Yeah. So.
Yeah, for sure. Because a lot of times, I think that we get to those big moments and feel like this is terrible, like this can destroy my marriage, but really you can use it as a tool to rebuild. Catalyst. Yeah, as a catalyst to rebuild and to restructure your marriage. And I think that if you do write a book, girl, I think it would be great. It would be extremely encouraging because there are other people who are going through what you're going through. It may not be med school. It may be, you know, some type of job training course, or their husband is still in college. Or for me, I'm the Chris in your marriage. Like, I'm in grad school. My husband's having to support me. So I think that would be really encouraging. So, you know, y'all stay tuned for the Jacksons new devotional whenever. So what keeps you going through all of the craziness of, you know, what is your marriage life? Like, it's beautiful, but there's just so much going on. So what keeps you going? What keeps pushing you to wake up every morning and being intentional in your marriage?
It sounds cliche, but love. And I think it will only sound cliche to people who think love is an emotional word that comes and goes.
You're about to preach.
It's not. It's completely action based. So because of the action love, whatever that may look like to anyone, like that is what would keep us going in our marriage. So because I actively love him, so I'm going to change the fact that some of my behavior may be detrimental to my marriage. Because I actively love him, I'm going to support him, you know, through his transition through school, matriculation through med school, every step of the way. And if I'm not doing it right in the way that he believes I should do it, then I actively have to change that. So it's all about being action-based to me, and love is probably the most action-based word I can think of that will keep us pushing forward even through all of the turmoil. Like, I love him. I've loved him since we met. One of the first things I said about him when I first met him or saw him was that he was going to be my husband, or that somebody like him should be my husband. But it's just always been that way with him. Always comfortable, even when I was with other people, just a very comfortable relationship that now that I have it and I had to come back and get it because I almost let it go, it's not something that I want to lose. And a lot of times women kind of do this whole grass is greener, oh, look at that person over there, or look at this husband to his wife over here. And when I think about that, like, there's not a lot of, I don't think there's any other man that I can compare Chris to that in my eyes would be better, because he's such a traditional and chivalrous gentleman that I don't see that as much as, you know, we used to see it back in the day with our parents or grandparents or whatnot. It's just not something that I see with other guys. So even in his approach from the first hello and I'm interested in you, and, you know, it was just totally different. And it's not something that I can look over the fence and say, you know, so-and-so over there has something better. Let me go and covet that. Like, it's just that I can't do that with him. So even through all of the mess, it's still like, okay, God blessed me with the best that was for me. Yeah. And, you know, once that's gone, you won't get anything like that again. So it's definitely the love that I believe we share, and something that I believe can be inspirational to others, again, for the benefit of God's kingdom. Yeah.
Like I said earlier, and like you've talked about, you are a teacher, you're in grad school for an MFT program, but you're also a national best-selling author, and you're working on a book right now, and you have your nonprofit organization, R.A.D.I.N.C.E, and there's a blog attached to that as well. And I'm pretty sure that's only scratching the surface, because you're also in the sorority, right? Delta Sigma Theta Incorporated. So I'm sure you do your service projects with them. And, I mean, you do everything. First of all, where's the time? Tell me how many hours you have in your day, because I don't think it's 24.
It's 24 and it's not enough time to do it all. Definitely don't do it all, and I won't claim to be like superwoman who can fit everything that's in my calendar in my day. It just doesn't happen. I have reminders in my phone to try to get me to write a chapter a day, or to blog at least once or twice a month, or to do this, that, and the third. But some days it's just like, I really just want to sleep, because that I don't get enough of, and that should really be in my calendar. Just sleep. Yeah. So sometimes, you know, it doesn't get done. But on the days and the months that I actually can touch on everything, I really try to, because just in the few years or a couple of years that we've been married, I've learned that it's so easy for me to lose myself, because like I said before, I'm emotionally invested. Everything is about my marriage, and I want my marriage to survive, so I'll do whatever I can to allow it to survive. Yeah. And unfortunately, in the beginning, that meant, so I can't go to this Delta event, or I shouldn't, you know, this is the only time Chris is not studying, so let me not work on my book right now, you know, just to get that quality time. So there have been some, like, you know, I'm not going to do this, or I'm going to push this off to the back burner, or I'm just going to wait for this, that, or the third, and that can cause you to just eventually lose yourself. You stop working on everything just to make sure you're spending time with your husband, or to just be lazy, because you don't get to do that very often. But in the moments that I'm really ambitious enough to do it, everything goes into a calendar. Reminders go off once a week, twice a week, for me to do various activities and things. We sync our calendars. So I know what he has going on. He knows what I have going on. So that kind of helps as well. Yeah. And then he's really supportive. Like, my ambition is what kind of drew him to me in the first place, and he'll tell me that all the time. So when I start getting lazy, it's like unattractive to him.
You're like, hold on, let me get myself back together. Come on.
So let me get on my grind, because like even things like me being here today, like stuff like that is so interesting to him, and it's really attractive to him to see me going after my dreams and my goals. And
I really think that's a good point, because I think a lot of us, because the first thing when we said, you know, what is a wife, you said sacrifice, and that's true. All we do is sacrifice half the time, or at least that's how it feels. And same thing for our husbands. They sacrifice for us, we sacrifice for them. But I think that sometimes that there has to be a line drawn for how far we're going to sacrifice, because yes, my life as a believer is to lay down my life for the sake of the gospel, and for even for my husband and people that I love. However, I think that there is this very faint line where we need to still do things for ourselves, not just because it adds value to us, because it does, but also because it enriches our marriage. Right. It's what makes our marriage better. I think that there's a place where we can overstep it, and when you become totally engulfed in what you're doing, it can be detrimental. However, it is beneficial to your marriage to do something for you. Right. You can't give, because at a certain point you're not gonna have no more to give. Right. So it's awesome that you have something that kind of pours into you the same way that you pour out to others. I feel like I don't know. I feel like I heard you saying that it's something that you do, but it's also something that you kind of need to do, or that you really want to do, and
it is. I thrive on being able to help other people. I'm an extrovert by nature, so I get my energy from others, and I'm in education because I want to inspire. I work with R.A.D.I.N.C.E, mentoring young women, because that's something that God has kind of drawn me toward doing. So one of the reasons why, aside from, you know, just not wanting to lose myself, one of the reasons why I don't just kind of leave my ambitions on the back burner, even with everything we have going on, is because I know it's a calling. So even at 16 years old, 16 is when I wrote my first book, and when it was released and published, and I became a bestseller at 19, my freshman year in college. So that at that moment in my life, there were so many young women who were like, I read your book, it inspired me to be celibate, it inspired me to get my life back on track with God. I'm connected to a young author right now who met me when I was in college, and he's an author now, and everything he does, he attributes to something that I said to him years ago. So that is one of the things that keeps me going with Radiance, with my writing, with anything that I'm doing, is because I know it's God's calling on my life. And even in those moments where I want to be lazy and where I just kind of want to give up because I may be going through a season of just depression or withdrawal, I try to keep going, or I try to at least do something or remember why it's so important, just so that it doesn't completely go away from me. One of the things my mom told me when I was younger is, if God gives you a gift and you don't use it, you'll lose it. So I don't want to lose it. So I mean, I do what I can to try to hold on to it, even when it gets really, really rough.
So if there's anybody watching and who's going through this, whether it's a husband supporting their wife or a wife supporting their husband, what advice do you have to give them on maneuvering through this season?
Well, number one, definitely have a discussion. There needs to be some sort of conversation when you find yourself transitioning from one aspect of life to another, even if it's just something like having a child, or someone starting a new job. Ask questions like, what is this going to look like? What are your expectations of me? What should I expect of you? Because when you don't do that, it opens up the doorway for everything to kind of come at you, and you're not prepared. So if you don't have on that armor to combat everything that's going to come at you, then you're kind of like stuck in battle with nothing, like David having to go find these 3 stones and just kind of let me hit this slingshot real quick so that I can get past this hump. And I mean, that's definitely something I wish we had done. The other thing I would say is understand what your purpose. So if you're not the one that's going through this transition directly, so for instance, I'm not in med school, but I'm supporting someone who is, what is my purpose in this? And then aside from what's my purpose in supporting my husband, how do I maintain my goals and my dreams and my aspirations? Like really seeking God to understand what your role is in all of this, and how do you not lose yourself while trying to be there for someone else. It's definitely important in this, in a season like this one. So, and another thing that I think is really important is understanding the financial situation. So you have, a couple that was once, both of them were working. Chris had a job, and of course I was still teaching, and now we're in a one-income household. As I mentioned before, there are few instances of a couple with kids or without kids living on an educator's income. But we had to adjust to that and really understand what that meant for us. So for us, that meant prioritizing and budgeting our money a lot better than we were. And like I said before, I'm an extrovert. I love being around other people. Chris is a little bit more introverted, so he can have it, take it or leave it. But for me, I like to go out, hang out with girlfriends, other wives, go out as a couple. We do date nights regularly, but sometimes date nights become indoor date nights where we watch movies together and just kind of cook dinner at home, which is perfectly fine.
Find more ways to be creative in that
definitely
too.
And that helps with intimacy. But also just understanding that we have things we want to do. We don't want to wait until he graduates to have kids or to buy a house. So we've started to reorganize our finances, and I say our because regardless of who's bringing in the money, like it's a one income household, of course, but I'm not the only one that is using the money. I'm not the only one that has to benefit from the money. So anytime something comes up with money, it's still our money, regardless of who has the name on the check and everything like that. I try to do my best to honor the fact that he is the head of our household. So anytime someone comes to me, hey, do you want to go out, or can you contribute to this organization or to this community event or whatnot, my first response is, okay, let me ask my husband. And some people find that odd and some people don't because they know our situation. But at the end of the day, he's not someone that I want to have to look back on in 4 years when he is, making the money from being a doctor.
Come on, doctor salary.
Because it's coming. And, then he's looking back and saying, well, when you had your money, it was your money as opposed to our money. And then he may begin to treat, his funds that way. We don't want that to come back on us. Right. So we do our best to make sure we honor God in our marriage, especially when it comes to our finances. Tithes are always paid first. And I will say that alone keeps us afloat. When I tell you money comes from out of the side woods and the backwoods, and we're like, okay, we weren't expecting this, but here it is, and it's sustaining us, and we have people who just really help us out where necessary. But again, it does go back to making sure we have our household in order. That's definitely something I would say to think about. You know, what are our finances going to look like? How will our lives shift financially when this transition occurs?
Thank you so much for coming, Brittney. I think that we had a really impactful conversation that would encourage a lot of wives that may be where you are right now. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me. I really enjoyed that conversation.
Yeah. So Brittney is, like I said, a national best-selling author, and she's working on a book right now. If people want to keep in touch with you and see what the finished product is and to get your book, where should they go?
I have a website, BrittneyHolmes.net. You can also follow my author pages on Instagram and Facebook. Author Brittney Holmes on Instagram, and on Facebook it's Author Brittney Holmes as well. There may be a Jackson at the end. I can't really remember, but either way, you should be able to find me on both of those.
Like I said, she's also founder of the nonprofit organization R.A.D.I.N.C.E. And what is R.A.D.I.N.C.E? How can people be a part of that? Just let us know how we can be a part of that work.
Of course. So R.A.D.I.N.C.E stands for Radical Attitudes Daring to Inspire a New Culture of Excellence. It is a aspiring nonprofit for young girls 12 to 18 who are just kind of matriculating through life. So it kind of pairs them with mentors, gives them opportunities to attend workshops throughout the year that are catered to their entire mind, body, and spirit, their entire whole being. And R.A.D.I.N.C.E will have a crowdfunding campaign established that you all can contribute to. The link will be posted in the description of this video. So please support us as we aspire to become a nonprofit organization as opposed to just a community organization. We can do a little bit more with that nonprofit status. So please help us out with donations or any type of sharing on your social media websites and any other support.
And the link to her crowdfund is going to be in the description box. So please be sure to check it out. I've had the opportunity to kind of see a little bit of her process, and I'm super excited because it's really what we need nowadays is good role models for our young women and our young ladies. So thank you so much. I'm excited to see what comes out of everything, to see what comes out of your marriage once Chris finally graduates. I know it seems like it's forever from now, but it's coming, I promise. and especially with your new book and with R.A.D.I.N.C.E. I mean, you're a phenomenal woman.
Thank you.
And I'm grateful to know you.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to see more videos like this, hit the subscribe button so that way you can stay in touch with what's going on with the Ofili Life and with Perspectives on Wife. And also follow me, go to my blog at authenticallywed.com. Until next time.
Love, what about it? All alone, I doubt it. She red bone, no brown skin. Them jeans, she can fit a few pounds, and everybody wanna know where I found